Hey, I'm Natasha Golinsky, and this is Never Launch on a Friday, the podcast about helping female agency owners and service-based founders achieve their goals through healing the root causes of what's keeping them stuck. If you're a female founder looking to chat one-on-one about where you're stuck, please book a coaching call in the show notes. I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Oh my gosh, Amber, I'm so excited for you to share today. This is going to be I think as you and I were talking about, so many women, high achieving women, we will push through pain, nobody's business. Last night, 10 years ago, I had this injury. I had this hamstring tendon tear and I trained on it. I trained on a busted hamstring for years. And then I went to yoga and stretching it, making it worse. And now 10 years later, it's still not healed. I still have pain and I'm an idiot. And I love your topic today that we're talking about. Okay, paying attention to pain instead of just masking it or pushing through it or trying to do this whole play hurt thing that we learn as women. I can't wait for you to share what you're going to share today.
Yeah. It's been years of actually putting the pieces together to figure out what is happening. But yeah, it's. I feel enlightened now that I've connected the dots.
I know, I can't wait. Because you and I originally met years ago when you were running your business. And I know that I've made this major transition into more of a wellness space and you've done the same thing. And those kinds of stories of going from something that's very cerebral into something that's very body-based is always such a fascinating transition to me.
And for me, there was also this, I don't want to say embarrassment's the wrong word, but shyness, because it's like, I'm used to this more, we'll say masculine energy of getting things done and showing up a certain way and all of those things. And then and now I'm going into wellness that some people might call woo or, woo kind of stuff. And it's like, no, are the same people going to get me? And maybe not, that's okay. But yeah, there was an identity thing that was sort of baked into it that I wasn't expecting. But yeah, I finally had to just decide, I'm going to embrace who I am, where I am this new season and roll with it.
So good. Oh, I totally get that too. Yeah, moving out of tech into wellness, it was, oh my God. But let me set the stage if people don't know you. So Amber built Trusty Oak, a virtual staffing company, into a 7-figure agency before selling it in 2025 and taught founders how to get organized on the outside, delegation, systems, and the operations that let a company run without its owner gripping every detail. What she couldn't build herself out of was what came next in her own body: frozen shoulders, sudden hair loss, a resting state that spiked to 100 while she sat still. She saw specialist after specialist. None of it was resolved until she found Qigong. What she didn't understand until recently was that what she was living through was perimenopause, and that the symptoms she chalked up to stress and overwork are common signs of a body whose rhythms are changing, are shifting, and being overridden anyway. The realization reframed everything about her second act. Amber is now a certified Qigong teacher working with women in midlife who spent years operating at full throttle and are starting to feel a body that won't cooperate with that anymore. She's the author of Firing Yourself, The High Achiever's Guide to Effective Delegation. Her current work picks up where her book left off, not just what you can hand off, but what you can stop overriding in a body that's asking for something different than before. Oh my God, this is my life right now. So tell me, let's hear your story. So when you went from teaching delegation to teaching women to listen to their bodies, what changed in your own life to force that pivot? Tell us your backstory.
Yeah, well, I think that my ultimate decision to sell my business actually was this whole thing we're talking about. It was like, I knew that what my business needed and what I needed to thrive had somehow diverged, but I didn't really know what I needed. I just knew that I could not keep building the business the way I had before and see the success that I had seen before and also feel good, because I was just like, I'm a really nerdy habit tracker. I use Notion. I built a whole daily journal where I'm tracking things like gratitude and wins and great things and those kinds of fun things to do, but also, how much sleep debt do I have? And, what kind of pain, how does my body feel twice a day and those kinds of things. And when I started looking at the data, it's like, gosh, I am tense. And the frozen shoulder thing was like literally a good part of a year that at one point I couldn't even lift my hand above my head. And before that, it was like numbness and tingling, neck tension. And people say, oh, you work on a computer, of course your neck's a little tight. But this was like to the extent that I did not, every time I would try to work out and do athletic things that I had done before, I would end up getting injured, or something would happen over and over. It was just like I'm not that old, is what I kept telling myself. Well, this shouldn't be happening. And then other people are like, yeah, that's just how it goes when you start reaching 40. I was sort of listening to the narrative of like, I guess most of the world and just saying, well, I guess I just have to accept that I feel this way. And I just kept overriding the feeling of I'm not done with like this business thing and I'm just going to keep pushing and it'll be fine. Like I can get through it. I'm a strong person. I'm resilient. I would kind of use these mantras to sort of like talk myself into keep going. But ultimately, like I just kept running up against the wall over and over again. And at one point, the point that I guess was the real pivot was when I read a book called The Mind Body Prescription. And it's similar to what maybe a book that more people know is The Body Keeps the Score, in that it's talking about how the body is actually holding trauma that is emotional and childhood stuff and those kinds of things. And so I just got curious enough to go like, okay, well, I've tried the chiropractor, I've tried cold laser, saunas, cryotherapy, supplements. I'm trying to think like physical therapy, like literally down the gamut of everything and still not feeling better. So it's like, well, maybe I'm trying to treat the body problem when it's actually an emotional problem. Like, what if? And so that was the pivot because the curiosity around that just sent me to talking about that more with my friends and other entrepreneurs and those kinds of things. And eventually I got a recommendation to work with this coach that used internal family systems therapy and actually psilocybin mushroom ceremonies as well as part of the therapy. And over a 6-month period, with great intention, I was really working on like what's happened, like what is it in here that needs released as far as like pain and trauma. And along with that, I was introduced to Qigong and breath work and we'll say just somatic processes to help me get in tune with my body and actually listen to the wisdom of my body instead of just overriding. This machine is here to serve me. It isn't teaching me anything. And, just like, no, I'm going to keep in my head the way that I've been successful before. And when I finally just said, okay, the body actually is talking to me about some things and I'm going to pay attention now. And sure enough, things started improving pretty quickly from there. The 6 months that I worked on all of these things were completely transformational, led me to realizing, okay, I need to do something different with my business. And then it still took a long time to actually see a lot of the changes I needed to make come to fruition. Selling a business is something you just wake up and say, okay, I'm deciding to do that. It took 15 months to finally get that done. So I just felt finally pointed in the right direction, but it was still quite a long journey from there, just continuing to work on the things on the inside.
So tell us about Qigong. I know we'll get into it, but what is it for people who don't know or haven't heard of it before?
Yeah, it's an ancient Chinese practice that it's debatable on how long it's been around. Like some people say 4,000 years, some people say 7,000 years. It's old, it's been there for a long time. If you're have ever heard of Tai Chi, which more people seem more familiar with, Qigong is like where Tai Chi came from. So Qigong is kind of at the top, and then there's Tai Chi, Kung Fu, different types of Qigong. There's spiritual Qigong, medical, and martial Qigong. But essentially what it is slow, gentle movements synced with the breath, and then using awareness in the same way you might with a meditation to focus on, sometimes it might be just on the feeling of your feet on the ground. It might be a certain organ where you're drawing your attention to a specific organ. There's visualizations with colors and light movement and stuff like that. Just a little bit of imagination type of stuff in terms of visualization. But the primary thing that I get from it is just this movement that's very intentional. You can call it meditation for people that don't like meditation, is what I like to say, because you get to
it's
move
like a moving
and
meditation.
you kind of have something, you have something clear to focus on versus, where it's like, stop thinking. It's like, this has a similar effect in terms of the benefits of it.
Yeah. And I want to ask you this before I forget, but I want to know what is the reason behind Qigong, like why it works, like for healing and things like that. But before I say that, I want to because I agree, a lot of high achieving women to sit and meditate is not a thing. It's not. I don't know about you, but like that is, for me, that's never really been a restorative type of thing. But I've always loved moving meditation, like what you're describing. Like, and a lot of women think that doesn't count as like being a restorative opening practice. And I was like, you could be hiking, let's say, that can be part of meditation. You could be dancing. It doesn't have to be you sitting on a cushion, channeling, it's moving and something restorative. And to me, the idea of meditation is, does it open you to a higher level of thought? Does it open you to healing? Does it create openness in your awareness and your consciousness? And if that doesn't happen when you're sitting on a cushion, then scrap it. Do it a different way. I don't know what your opinion, but I spent decades hating that I didn't like meditation. It just didn't serve me. I would just get so wired. And they were like, you got to keep at it. I'm like, I did transcendental meditation. I have a yoga teacher certification. I've done all the things. And I'm like, the movement always to me has been so much more meditative than any amount of sitting and clearing has ever been. But
yeah, honestly, I do practice meditation as well, but 12 minutes, I read an article that 12 minutes is the minimal effective dose. So I just shoot to try to get 12 minutes in. And I change it up a lot. So sometimes it is just the very, the timer and just observe your thoughts. And it's very challenging. Meditation is a hard practice. But there's another one that I've been practicing, I've revisited recently, called a loving kindness meditation. And so I think if you have something to focus on, you've got some guidance in a meditation that can serve even a different purpose than what Qigong could. But if that feels too much, don't let it keep you from doing something in terms of mindfulness. And so Qigong, I feel like, is a really great way to get into mindfulness practices without that, having to climb that hurdle of sitting still if you're somebody that's neurodivergent or just like, clearly has a lot of things going on that you just want to focus on. So, and to answer your question about as far as Qigong and how it works and why it works, if you've ever had acupuncture, we're working with the same system of the meridian. So traditional Chinese medicine essentially is saying that we've got these pathways. You can think of like rivers through the body, and energy is flowing through the body to nurture the organs, it's moving along the fascia tissue, the nervous system. It's all everywhere and all in us. But Qigong, the meaning of the word Qi is life force or energy. And then Gong is the skill or the practice of working with that life force. So Qigong is essentially a practice of learning how to work with the energy and move it with intention. And so, it works because, one, it's very calming on the nervous system, but it's also, and this is where I'm beginner level of learning a lot of this stuff, but you're directing energy to organs that need it. Maybe there's excess energy in some area that's cutting off energy to a different organ. And so it's about bringing harmony to the body, essentially.
Yeah. So, and I know I was thinking about this a lot before we prepped. So high achieving women, right? So there's a lot of times when we're just in go mode, right? We're getting all these flags that something's changing or that something is happening. We hear these things like, oh, you're just stressed or you're tired or you're working too hard, and we override it. And so what's your take on that? Because I know I have lived that most of my life. I've been an entrepreneur my entire career. The idea of play hurt, the idea of do it anyway. If you're tired, don't be a baby. Just go, you know what I mean? Or if you're all these different messages about, especially I'm going to say for women, yes, but also about entrepreneurship, like no pain, no gain.
There's so many little,
Oh my God. Yeah. And it's like, I know now, having had cancer, having had chronic pain, having had insomnia, having had migraines, I know that is terrible advice. Terrible advice. The other day I went to sit down. I was like so tired. I was just falling asleep at my desk, and it was only 1:00. And normally I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go take a nap. I'm not going to go lie down. I'm not going to go for a walk. I'm just going to stay at the desk until 3. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I didn't have any calls or anything. I just had some miscellaneous I had to do. And I'm like, I'm going to go lie down. And I was like, that is so hard. Just that for most women and most entrepreneurs is an impossible decision to make. And I want to get your take on this because I know you had this story as well, right? You were seeing the doctors, you were told this is stress. Tell us about your experience of that, of being that woman, being that entrepreneur, overriding, trying to change the narrative about this is a stress thing. Like, talk us through that process.
Yeah, I think, I actually created an art series that kind of tells this story to a degree. There's one piece that is about the survivor because my upbringing is about, surviving. There were things that were hard that made childhood harder than it needed to be. I learned how to cope with that by becoming this strong person and, really resilient. And because I did that as a child and it worked, it solved the problems that I had. It became a belief that, okay, acting like I'm in survival mode gets me far. I climb the ladder. I'm successful. I'm high achieving. Perfectionism has actually helped me stand out among other people that are flaky or whatever. So it became like a reinforcement of a belief that this is how you succeed. And I think that that's the narrative that all of us as entrepreneurs are seeing. Okay, this working hard equals success. Having the right relationships equals success. You're like getting these formulas kind of fed to you, and you're like, okay, yeah. And then you prove it to yourself that it works. And it does for a while. But what I found for myself is that, yes, and there hits this point where now something has to change. And you can't just stay in survival mode all the time. And our bodies are, like I said earlier, it's like, it's not just we'll say a meat suit,
Yeah.
that we're like, well, this is how I experience life. It actually, there is wisdom in the actual functions of the body. You look to nature, there's all kinds of metaphors you can find out there for like how the world actually works. And so if we lean in and actually tune into what the body has to say about this, we become it's almost like a superpower that we've let go. And one of the things that, just to draw back into the perimenopause stuff too, what traditional Chinese medicine calls menopause is the second spring. And they treat it as something to celebrate because they see it as a shifting of the energy. So the energy that was focused on reproduction and those types of things in our younger years is now switching places and coming up to the heart and to bring out creativity and wisdom and inspiration. And so they look at it as, oh, you're getting to move into this next stage where you can have all these things instead of putting so much energy into this, to reproduction.
Yeah.
So it's, when you think about it that way, it's like, oh, like I
Yeah.
am getting some new powers for myself, if you want to say it in a funny way. It's like, okay, yeah, things are shifting so that I can use all this energy for something more. And it almost like for high achieving women and entrepreneurs, this is what I always wanted. Now I'm reaching a point where I actually have the vitality in the right place, in the right focus for me to actually achieve these things. So to me, the second spring analogy, it just fits so well because it's,
No.
let's go. I'm ready. I want another chapter of high achieving, and I want to do it different this time. I don't want it to feel like survival and grinding and overriding. And so, yeah, I'm telling myself this new story of, hey, I can actually operate in flow. I can use creativity in a new way. I can lean on my intuition and actually trust it. I've learned a lot over the years. And yeah, just kind of, it's almost like a new level of maturity that feels like is rising up. And so I'm going to harness it and try to use that to my advantage versus fighting it like I had been in the beginning when it first started happening.
Totally. Oh my God. Because when you were like trying to find solutions so tell us about your medical journey. Like you ran into doctors and the specialists. Tell us about that side of it.
Yeah. So it was mostly tension in my body. So I started with chiropractic care. And I'm also one of those people that doesn't really love the Western medicine approach to, with medications and surgeries and those kinds of things. So I was probably more tenacious than a lot of other people about avoiding those things. But yeah, the chiropractor was helping me, but it was just like, when is it going to be like where I feel good? Because I was looking at these logs that I was talking about earlier, and it's like, man, every day I'm talking about either somewhat tense or severely tense or shoulder pain or neck pain, tingling in my arm. And that did eventually start affecting my sleep and my ability to do fun things with my friends. And, like I signed up for a half marathon and then I couldn't actually run it because I was hurting so bad. And so just things like that, where it's like, okay, this is really affecting my life. So I tried, the chiropractor was, trying everything too. So she's like, take these supplements. And I don't even remember at this point, I had a big pile of supplements that I was taking for various things. At one point, I eventually started like let me take one away and see how I feel. And
Yeah.
eventually I got down to just some calcium.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like I didn't need all of these other things quite like I thought I did, but she was giving me cold laser treatments, also not helping. It was so bad at one point that I went to get an MRI because there is something wrong. Please, this natural stuff isn't working. Let's go get an MRI. MRI, they're like, there's nothing wrong. Everything looks good. There's a little bit of a thickening in one of your tendons or ligaments. And there's nothing wrong, but here, go to physical therapy. And the physical therapist, this was the funniest moment for me because he had me lay down and he show him like how far I could lift my arm above my head. wasn't very far. But then he placed his hand on my thigh, and then he did it again on my rib cage. And I could raise my arms just a little bit higher whenever he did that. And he was like, that's weird. It's like this superficial thing. It's like your whole body is just contracting into the shoulder. And when I give superficial support, it somehow convinces it that it can do this. And when he said that, I thought, 3 years ago, my friend invited me to a breathwork class, like where you're laying down and you're intentionally breathing rapidly to get into the fight or flight state. And then you do some breath holds, and then you have a process of releasing and coming down. And you can have these emotional releases and stuff. But thinking of it as a way to heal my body was an interesting idea, especially because here I am going, maybe it's emotional stuff. So all of this was sort of happening in tandem. So I go to a breathwork class. My shoulder is so tight that I can feel my scapula like protruding into the yoga mat that I'm laying on. It's not, I can't lay flat on that shoulder. I can't do this, these kind of twists.
Yeah.
Laying flat, my arm would just float up. And I started doing the breath work. I was already doing Qigong about 10 minutes a day. So I just dedicated to doing breath work once a week, Qigong every day. And there was one day in breath work, I felt just the slightest release of tension. It was so slight, but it was just enough to go, I think this might be working. And I just kept doing it, kept tracking, and little by little, mobility started coming back, and it just started getting better. So all I can say is that breath and movement and not pushing, like that was literally the key. I couldn't push my body beyond its current limits, and eventually my limits expanded. So I was able to do all the things that I was able to do before. I could go for a run without some problem. I don't run as much anymore, but I lift weights, and I could do these things without getting injured. So yeah, it was just this trial and error kind of thing where I was just trying everything and nothing would work, because I needed to address the root cause, which was actually this emotional stuff that I wasn't addressing. And so, yeah, releasing that and paying attention to the body just started making all the difference. And so it was like a snowball effect where it just got faster and faster, and things were getting better faster and faster. I was really excited to figure that out.
Yeah. And I want to bring it to the perimenopause conversation, because I know a lot of women, like when I was in chemo last year, I was put into medical menopause. So I was in menopause like overnight, and I didn't even know for a while. I just thought I was feeling awful because of all the chemo symptoms and stuff. But menopause is no joke. Like you said, it's like the second spring. I love that, but it also sucks a lot. This burning into the new season, it's like there's a lot, and it can cause it can be very symptomatic depending on the woman. It can have all these different things that we're not aware of that we might just, like you said, chalk up to stress or whatever. What are some of the things that you've learned about your journey, like discovering that you were perimenopausal, like that you think a lot of women are negating, trying to like improperly explain? Tell us about that, like what you've learned about entering into that new hormonal season.
Yeah. Well, it was earlier this month that I actually connected the dots of perimenopause is actually what I was experiencing, because all those symptoms I just explained to you, I really thought my body's just screaming like, you can't do this kind of work anymore. You just can't keep up. You need to go ahead and accept, this is the inner self-talk that's not so nice, where you start thinking like, well, there's something wrong with me. And like, I'm having this identity crisis because I'm no longer aligned with the work that I do. Or, there were all these things coming up about it. And now that I went to what happened earlier this month that kind of clicked the dots was I went to a presentation, actually a PBS taping of a film called The Pause. And it's coming out in October for Menopause Awareness Month, which I didn't even know, but I guess there's a lot of awareness months in October. but the symptoms, they were explaining them in the context of perimenopause, and I realized that's everything that I had happening. And I didn't think that's what it was, even though I knew some women get frozen shoulder when they're in. So it just was like this epiphany of a moment of, okay, let me reflect on this a little bit. And that's where, I can see now in hindsight that I was overriding, thinking that it's stress, thinking that something's wrong with me, thinking I'm just misaligned, all of those things. And it really is just because of my hormones and the shift that's happening. So I think the thing I would say to anyone that's younger or at any of like that age range you were talking about, where it's like, I'm feeling these things, but maybe you haven't made the connection to it being related to perimenopause, consider it, because There are things you can do to bring yourself relief. You might be telling yourself, I don't feel like myself. Well, that's part of it because our hormones are literally doing this gigantic wave. It's like adolescence all over again, where we're having these floods of things that are happening. And we think, oh, well, we just suddenly lost the plot or something. I don't know what's going on. But there's support. And if you're somebody that wants to do more natural things, that's where it comes in. Where for me, Qigong, I discovered solved all these things, even though I didn't realize it was related to perimenopause. It actually is helping. And then when I start doing research about it, there are other people that are using Qigong to help with the hot flash, for example. There's a certain movements you can do to kind of cool off. It's smoothing out the hormone balance comes back into a little bit better state. So it supports you through that. And obviously go to your doctor, and like see if you need to get some hormone replacement therapy and those kinds of things too, because those make a huge difference. I'm not taking anything like that right now. I may need that in the future, but it's really just admitting that there could be a connection and don't be so hard on yourself because it's just part of what's happening in our bodies chemically.
Yeah, no, for sure. I remember too, because I didn't go through perimenopause. I just was like in menopause right away.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to the oncologist and I was like, I just feel, obviously I felt bad from all the chemo, but I'm like exactly what you said. I remember I was so angry and and it was like beyond feeling sick and being like mad about cancer and stuff. But I just remember just like, and I'm like, this is not normal. I'm not feeling like myself, like you said. It's just, and I think, I don't know about you, but for me, trained myself to ignore all of that. It's like, I'm going to say this and it's like, my MO was like, don't be such a fucking pussy. That was my MO for all my life. Like I was raised in a really messed up family situation. I had a bipolar parent who was like, and I had 5 younger siblings. And to your point, I learned how to be on my game and because my family depended on it. And then, and then it was just the survival, quote unquote, in that situation depended on me not paying attention to what was going on with me. Because there was so many other people that needed me to watch out for, right? And then you have kids and it's the same thing. And mom's like, it's cliche, right? But moms always put themselves last and all these things. And it's so that mantra of, I don't know I'd love to hear if you had something like that as well. But mine is even now, if I wake up and I haven't slept and I have a migraine, it's not like, okay, take a break. It's like, take the drugs, get to work. Don't be such a fucking pussy. And it's so hard to untrain that. And to be like, to your point about, okay, being more, I'm going to say spirit led or being more intuition led, like paying attention, being in that feminine energy, being like the feminine energy being the creator, not the worker, like not the hustler. And it's like for women who are very high achieving, and this is maybe a kind of a different spin to the conversation, but I'd love your thoughts, is I really do think that masculine energy, like too much masculine energy is so damaging to our mind, to our soul, to our body. And I'm like the quintessential example of that, like chronic pain, migraines, insomnia, all the things that, and I feel like there's so many variables that women like in this mid 30s to mid 50s in this range of so many changes, like maybe your kids are bigger and then all these hormone changes and that reconditioning and that second spring of moving out of that, like, I'm going to say alpha energy, but I don't mean like we can't lead and we can't, because obviously I always want to lead and create, but more into that softer space of graciousness and openness and trust and intuition. And I would love your thoughts on that. Did you come out of a very alpha male energy as well? Did you have a mantra that was like, like, you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Like to my equivalent?
Yeah. It's, I didn't have like a specific mantra, but attitude and like there was probably some self conversation along those lines. But yeah, it's like everything you're saying definitely aligns. I mean, the like we were talking about survival mode. Yes. It's like, okay, this is what makes me strong. I can be the person that is always there for everybody. That's just, I like taking care of other people. It made me feel good. It made me feel like what I was doing was valuable. So there's like a lot of other stuff tied up in that. But yeah, I definitely push beyond what the body was asking for. And I would turn to things like, I mean, even for a while, I drank a lot of alcohol, especially during COVID. I actually quit drinking alcohol in November 2022. I went 2 years without any. And now I like vacations and stuff like that. I'll have a drink or something like that. But it was a coping mechanism. It was like it's to your point of like, let's just do whatever we have to do to get through because the world needs me. People need me, all of those things. So yeah, I definitely can relate to just, choosing that path. But what I think that is important to say about all of this is that yes, I sold my business. So it might, in one way, it's like, well, yeah, now you've got it easy. You don't have your business and you found your way out of that. But like, how can we still keep achieving big things in our lives without overriding the body? And that's sort of the experiment that I'm living in right now because I'm launching this new business where I'm teaching Qigong and I'm showing people how this can be a different way to do things. And my mission is not to help people slow down and find their Zen. Yeah, we do need to do that, but it's really about creating balance so that now you can go do the things, even with things changing in your body and your environment. Maybe you're taking care of aging parents. That's the thing in midlife. There's so much that is coming down on you and you're used to that survival mode, but guess what? It's not going to work in this season. You're just going to burn yourself out. So it's just a new way of approaching and believing that going with flow in this way and actually taking care of the body first creates more energy and spaciousness to be able to go do the big thing that you've been dreaming. The thing that you've been saying you want to do for the last 20 years, but you can't get time because you just keep doing the things that are right in front of your face. This might be the time to actually really fulfill the purpose and the dreams that you've had all your life. And that's why I look at it as a pretty cool gift.
No, it's so interesting because it's like one of the things that I've been learning a lot over the last few years is all about somatic work. What does that mean? And the idea that trauma lives in your cells and lives in your body. And it's not just a woo thing. It's legit. Your body knows. And I remember, to your point about the book, right? And I remember a year ago, I was working with a somatic because I was really curious what it was. And I was like referred to somebody and so I like to try different modalities of healing. I just like it. It's kind of fun. So I was like working with a somatic woman and we were talking about something related to my mom. And I all of a sudden started feeling really ill. Like I wanted to throw up. Like all of a sudden just talking about it, I started feeling really sick. And she was like, okay, well, put your hand where it hurts. And I was like, wherever. And then she took me through this process, through this exercise of feeling more and more of the pain and more of the discomfort. And then, like you said, through breath to like talk to my body that it was okay to let this go. And it's so funny because now I can't even generate that feeling anymore. It's just so interesting. And it wasn't even that long. It was like 1 or 2 sessions. And I was like, so when I think about this incident with my mom now that happened, it was really, really a traumatic situation. I'm like, I can observe it and I see it and I remember it, but there's no activation. And it's like when your body, like your cells it seems like I would love you to have, I'm probably explaining this so badly. I would love your thoughts on what that means, like how our body keeps the score. Because I think for so many women who are like, we live so in our head and we have no concept of what that means. I know for me, I was like, that's so dumb. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, And when I was like, one of the things that looking back now on my life, I had a hysterectomy when I was 34 because I had endometriosis. That was for 20 years of chronic pain, just from the time I was 14 to the time I was 34, every month, and it never got better. And I was taking so much medication just to be able to walk and I would want to pass out. It was just so painful. And I remember looking back on that now and they're like a lot of women, and I'm not a doctor. This is just pure. I was talking to naturopaths and all these things. And they're like a lot of women who have really bad connections with their dads. They have a really bad father-daughter dynamic. They develop dysfunction in their reproductive systems. And just because that's a part of being like, they want to be seen by their dad. They want to be taken care of by their dad. But when you're not seen, when that daughter femininity is kind of not, I don't know if you know what I'm trying to say, but it's like it can develop subconsciously a lot of problems. And I think about that and I'm like, because I have many, many sisters and none of them have it. My mom didn't have it. And so as the oldest daughter, I sometimes think, was that? And no one, I can never know, but I always think about that. Was that endometriosis experience emotionally connected to a rejection by your father? Do you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know, it's just a theory, but
yeah, it's a theory that could be worth exploring further. I mean, one thing, I'm just on the tip of diving into more about traditional Chinese medicine because Qigong was just a practice for me. Now it's becoming a lifestyle and I want to learn how all the different things correlate. But the way that it's taught is that there is an emotion associated with different organs of the body. And you can, it's just like, it is all connected. And maybe there is something to do with, we'll say, a deficiency that was created by a lack of nurturing from your dad or something like that. I can't, not an expert, but that's just, my theory as well is just there. It doesn't sound that far fetched to me. I was absolutely a skeptic of all of these things in the past. I couldn't even go there. I wouldn't even entertain the conversations. But internal family systems that I mentioned earlier, this type of therapy is a somatic practice. So the way it works, you just like what you described with feeling sick after talking about your mom, you would intentionally maybe start talking about an incident that is upsetting for you, and then notice where in the body you're feeling any kind of sensation. It might be like a little twitch in your eye, or maybe you just feel a little warmth in your shoulder, or your jaw gets clenched tight, or something like that. It could literally be anything. But if you're in a meditative state, just, eyes closed, really tuning in, okay, where in my body am I experiencing this? And then wherever it is, you put your hands there. And like you were saying, you talk to that part. So internal family systems operates on the idea that we're made up of multiple parts. And, like a part of me wants to go to the party, a part of me wants to stay home and read. We all refer to ourselves these ways. So there are these different parts. And so like coming into contact with the part that is activating whenever you hear this about your mom or think about this, and asking, like, how can I help? Why are you reacting this way? And actually, if you get quiet enough, you can have what feels like an actual dialogue internally, where like you feel an answer rise up. And then you can ask other questions. You can thank them. You can tell this part, hey, I'm 45 years old now. You don't have to protect me like you did whenever I was 10. Or whatever So it's really helpful. Like that somatic practice helped me really make the connection of, okay, these emotions are affecting my body. And there is a way to just acknowledge it, update the operating system. Hey, doing things differently now. You don't have to react this way, and we can let it go. And once you do, then you don't have that activated feeling anymore. Now, I have situations like that too, where it's used to get me so upset to talk about X or Z or whatever. And now it's like, I can tell someone the story and not feel all those things come back up, like heart racing and all of that stuff. So it's really powerful stuff.
So like for a woman who is maybe having symptoms in their body, is maybe emotionally feeling off, like not quite herself, is used to sort of being in that like hero mode. What do you recommend as a first step for someone in that boat? Like where you and I, let's say, both were. And what would you have said to us like back in the day about how to look at this? And obviously we're not doctors, we're not giving diagnoses, but looking back on what would you have said to yourself?
I would have wanted to find this connection between emotion and body sooner. I think it's as simple as just admitting there is a connection. And that sounds so simple. And maybe, a lot of people maybe have already said that, but I think there's still a ton of people who are not thinking of their bodies this way. So really just admitting that there could be something. And suppressing and pushing away and overriding is not the healthiest way to deal with these things that have happened to us. It's always going to be better if you can, in a safe environment of some kind, maybe with a therapist, maybe with another person, actually face the problem, cry it out, feel the things, let your body express the feelings that you're feeling and acknowledge it, and learn how to move beyond that. And what I mean by move beyond that is take on some practices that are going to help you feel more stable. Like journaling is actually a really big thing that I always recommend, because too many of us are not telling ourselves the truth. We are just going through life, pressing on. This is the theme of what we've talked about. But if you sit down with a journal that you imagine no one is ever going to read it, you can burn it when you're done. Like, don't think about it from that perspective of what's someone going to think if they see this. Write the truth to yourself. It starts changing things in the body automatically, just being that honest with yourself. And you are going to come up against a hard decision. When you start doing that, something's going to be calling to you. I've got to stop that, or I've got to start this, or, I've got to have that hard conversation, and just do the hard thing. That is harder than like the override, or that is easier than the override is what I'm trying to say. So so I think journal, find some daily practices that support you, like Qigong, I'm always going to recommend.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it doesn't have to be Qigong. It could be yoga, or it could be some other thing where you're using your body on a daily basis to tap into how you're feeling and really know, what do I feel today? Because
Yeah.
we don't always pay attention to that either.
Totally. I think you're dead on. I think it's that awareness is the first point. Sometimes I'm afraid to journal because I'm like, I don't want to hear what's going to come out. I'm like, sometimes I resist journaling. I'm like, I just can't deal with one more thing today. Like that's going to come. Because I agree. Like years ago, I read a book, The Artist's Way by,
The Artist's Way. Yes.
yeah. And anyone who hasn't read The Artist's Way, like that's, even though it was written for creatives, like I think it's like the ultimate self-help book, in my opinion. It's
It
the
is.
ultimate like self-love book. And I'm not a creative in the sense of drawing and painting and writing screenplays, but like her, but I was just that practice of start your day, write out, just brain dump for 3 pages and whatever amount of it is, like, doesn't really matter. Right.
Yeah. All these journals back here, those are all my daily pages from that I learned from The Artist's Way. Yeah. I just do the spread. So 2 pages in these notebooks.
Okay.
But
That makes sense.
yeah, The Artist's Way. So yeah, this would be a much longer conversation, but last September, I challenged myself to actually do the work of The Artist's Way and went through the 12-week program, and I called it 100 liminal days. I kind of expanded it to give myself a little bit more time to miss some days and stuff. But every single day I blogged on my website. I have a blog, 100 blog posts documenting my journey through The Artist's Way and through what I called this liminal season. And I learned so much about myself, and I learned just how, like, what I actually wanted, because that was something that I didn't realize I didn't know. I sold my company and then I'm like, well, who is Amber that isn't a CEO? I don't know what to do with myself. And so this was a big part of it. But yeah, the journaling and also the artist date. She recommends something where you take yourself on a date that feeds your inner artist. And I started doing that just as hikes, which ultimately became hikes and Qigong. And, I would go to a museum or something like that. And these things actually did make a huge difference. It seems too easy, but she's like, it would work for anyone, even if you're not an artist. It's something that would help you, like, just level out, get to know yourself, spend time with yourself.
Well, we need to do another call about The Artist's Way because I agree. I read that book probably 4 or 5 times. And I don't know about you, but every time I read it, it's like something in your soul gets so full. And I feel like emotional just talking about it. But it's like a book that is written to your soul. And the practices, I used to do morning pages all the time. And now I don't, because sometimes I take a break and then I come back to it and I process in different ways now. But it's whenever I think about how much openness in you and love and creativity and joy and self-expression that her practices create. It's, oh my God. So if you haven't read the book, note to listener, if you haven't read the book, The Artist's Way, go get it. Incredible it's a life-changing book. And I don't say that about a lot of books. So that's awesome. So Amber, as we're wrapping up, how can people get a hold of you if they want more information, they want to work with you? Tell us all the things. Do you have a promo? Do you have anything?
Yes.
Tell us all about it.
Yeah. So my website, amberlgray.com. My last name is Gray. amberlgray.com/newsletter. My newsletter is not like a boring whatever, it's not marketing material. It's actually me sharing stories about my life, about being a founder, being exited, trying to find myself, trying to achieve big things. Like I'm writing about Qigong and how some of that works. If people like to kind of see the science that's involved with it as well. I am hosting events around town. I have a YouTube channel where I've got practice videos. So if you wanted to practice Qigong in the privacy of your own home with a guided practice, you can visit my YouTube channel, which is Amber Gray ATX. But the newsletter, every week I send out a video. I send out the thoughts, reflections, those kinds of things that are really related to achieving big things without having to sell yourself to these ideas of like constant on and constant productivity and actually learning how to flow with the natural things within our body. So I do have some stuff that like some more involved experiences coming up next year, like a hiking and backpacking and Qigong for women in midlife, retreats, those kinds of things. So, but I'm kind of just now jumping off into all this stuff. So I don't have anything currently, but I do live events in Austin. Some usually free. I've been doing free events just in my neighborhood where I'm gathering people to practice Qigong and have a cup of coffee and chat. So those are the kind of things that I have going on right now.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. I just registered too. I don't know why. I didn't realize I wasn't registered. I'm like, I want to get that newsletter.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I agree. I really feel as I've run my own business my entire career, like I've always been since I was a kid. And I really, really, really do feel that that's the way that women are transitioning. We're moving out of working in like male mode and
Mhm.
we're moving into more feminine, and it works. And it is so much more. I always thought like running a business from a feminine energy, more feminine energy was a weakness. I always thought that muscle through and push and break it down was like the vibe of business, but it's not. And I really think you're contributing to such an important conversation. But oh my God, Amber, well, thank you so much for being here. I have so many more questions. We'll have to do a part two, but it was like, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your example. Like, it is not what you've done of a reinvention. And like, I don't like the expression of the rising of a phoenix kind of thing, but like you came out of something completely different, coming out fresh, something coming out new out of something completely different. That's brave and that's hard. And your story about how facing your demons and you did and you do, and that is hard to do. It is so much easier to just keep in someone's habits and instead of looking at it and healing it and letting it go. And that is so hard. So I'm just
Yes,
like
thank
very
you.
inspired. So
Well, and I want to say I did not do it alone. I couldn't face those demons without some support. And so if you're feeling that, listeners, it's like really that's the one thing I really want people to understand is we don't have to go through it alone. Find a coach, find somebody that really knows how to walk you through these kinds of transitions because it can make all the difference and a lot faster. It can accelerate the process if you're working with someone that can support you. So highly recommend.
exactly. This is not, yeah, use a professional, get the help, and it's absolutely
Yeah.
worth it. So awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, we'll have to bring you back for that part two talking about the artist way. So
That'd be so fun. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was good to chat.
you're welcome. That's it for today. If something landed for you, share it with a founder who needs to hear it. That's how this work spreads. Find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube at Never Launch on a Friday. And if you want to keep this conversation going, our free Slack community is in the show notes. If you want to learn more about everything we're building, head to neverlaunchonafriday.pro. All the details are there. And if you're a female founder looking to chat one-on-one about where you're stuck, please book a coaching call in the show notes. This work matters, and so do you. See you next week.